So hello, everyone, and welcome to session 6C. Get those together. Mapping the rich resources of our shared social network. And just as a quick reminder, we are recording this. So if you don't want to have your video on, you can feel free to keep that camera off. My name is Amy Seitz with the Alaska Food Policy Council, and I will be moderating this session today. So please, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, type them in the chat box and I will monitor that. And today we are welcoming our speakers, Jim Best, Cindy Carnes, Robbie Mixon, and Rachel Miller. And I will go ahead and turn it over to you, Jim, I believe, as the first.
I think Robbie's going to kick it off.
Oh, yeah. Well, never mind. I'll turn it over to Robbie.
We changed it last minute, Amy. I'm sorry. Let's see. You guys able to see our presentation?
There we go.
Okay, cool. So this project all started with a USDA Regional Food System Partnership grant called Alaska Food Policy and Beyond, Growing Connections and Building Networks for Greater Food Security. And we're just going to spend just a couple minutes giving you a brief preview of it, and then we're going to pass it over to the networking experts that can explain this just a little bit better than us. Rachel, do you want to, you want to do this part? Okay.
Over to me. Thanks, Robbie.
Over to you.
So I think it was back in late 2020, the Alaska Food Policy Council was awarded a USDA grant. It's called the Regional Food Systems Partnership Grant. And AFPC, our overarching mission is to connect, inform, and advocate for a more food secure Alaska. And the USDA has funded this this really cool category of grants called these Regional Food Systems Partnership Grants. And there's two tiers of that. One is planning and one is implementation, which is for a bigger amount of money. And we went for the planning grant to determine if there was a need and interest and potential in Alaska to develop a statewide network that connects people's food systems skill sets. So people who know how to jar and can food, people who know how to forage, all of the softer human-based skills. And then also to get a better understanding of where our hard, tangible food systems assets are in the state. Where is the cold storage? Where is the dry storage? What's our transportation system like? And each part of the state, we know we have challenges in, but we really wanted to bring it all together to get a holistic picture of what is happening in food systems in the state. And so we recruited 13 different communities, which we're calling nodes. And we've gone through, we'll walk you through the project phases in a second. We'll go back a couple slides. And this project will result at the end of 2022 in a 10-year statewide food security action plan. So this is a report that will be open and publicly accessible. Our goal is for this to be an educative, a roadmap resource and an education resource for legislators, for local food policy councils, for community leaders, and really for anyone who wants to see the big picture of potential food security in the state and how we can get there. Go ahead, Robbie.
So we looked at, tried to look at all the different levels, the different scopes, from super hyper local, tiny communities all the way up to Anchorage. We looked across sectors. We looked at nonprofits with government agencies, all kinds of things to see how all the parts were connected. And specifically around our social network as well. So who's talking to who wants to talk to who has skills that other folks need. So who has projects that worked out well, who didn't have a project that worked out well, what were those lessons learned, and can projects be replicated in other areas of the state. So that was in a nutshell our goals with this. And as Rachel said, putting together an action plan that other organizations can use. What type of projects and funding were people able to get? So looking at all of those things.
Robbie, I just want to add one part here.
Yeah.
This was a big deal grant for us because the USDA was funding dialogue. They were funding communities talking to each other, which often when you find with government grants, it's they want tangible outcomes. And so in addition to the report, one of the metrics of evaluation is connection, which we really appreciate coming from the USDA. So that's very cool to see. I just wanted to add that part. And the fact that this is a USDA grant, we geographically defined regions, but we already understand from feedback from our nodes that regional can be cultural, regional can be defined a variety of different ways. And so that's already one of the learnings. If some folks are taking issue with, the geographic definition of regional, we hear you, we get it. That will be incorporated in the report. Thanks, Robbie.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing, this was the first year for this grant. So that was the other reason we wanted to jump in on it, because it was really open to interpretation. Maybe they'll see our project and be, we can't believe we funded that, but I don't think they will be. So just another note to that. So yeah, our main project objectives, we mentioned the 10-year food security action plan that's informed by people around the state. But really for me, the main objective was the connection, the networking, collaboration, getting people to talk from those tiny, small, localized food policy councils up to the statewide level, where we can hopefully help to influence state and national policy to help us get where we want to go. The other piece to this, we are, which Jim and Cindy will share their experience with, and then we will tell you about our opportunity, but creating a network of folks, who's doing what, who wants to work together, all of those things. So that's the piece that we're here to talk to you about today. And then this is just our real general timeline. Like Rachel said, we started in fall 2020. We worked on identifying organizations to help lead these nodes. We worked with people that we've collaborated with before, but also probably about half of the nodes are folks we haven't collaborated with on. So already our network has grown by double at least. We spent the fall and early spring doing some network workshops led by a facilitator named Lisa Trocchia. She is a networking expert as well. So she led these 6 nodes, or these 6 workshops with over 50 participants, in how to create more inclusive networks and how to do some of that work. And then this spring, we're almost done with our community asset mapping workshop. So it's an asset forward approach, looking at what we have and where we want to go, but also within that talking a little bit about the barriers to getting there. So we're kind of in the last few phases of the project, launching our social network, and then seeing what these mapping sessions have netted, so we can start working on the action plan, which will be created collaboratively with all of the node participants. Okay, I think I just talked all about that. So over to you, Cindy and Jim. I think Jim's talking first. So.
Okay. Thank you, Robbie and Rachel, and thanks, Cindy, for connecting me to all of you. I'm gonna just share my screen here and we'll be off and running. You've seen the full screen? Yeah. Good. So in this time together, we'll explore what social system mapping is, which is what Robbie, Rachel alluded to, and how it can be used to help shift your network of relationships and resources towards the outcomes that you want to achieve. I'm gonna just throw in the chat here a link to my slides so that you can follow along as you will or not. And off we go. I just thought I'd throw a couple of thoughts out of here, get our minds going. Theory, change, critical connections. You know, I just listened to Elga Garza's keynote and she hit all the points I'm going to hit here. She talked about collective strength, building capacity, changing culture, working across differences for common cause, super systems thinker, equity, and she centered the cycle of listen, tweak, evolve, which we're going to as well. So she's already done my presentation here, but moving on, welcome. Thanks for taking the time. I'm Jim Best. I'm a longtime participant in the social system mapping community of practice that I'm in with Cindy. It's convened by Christine Capra's Greater Than the Sum. And I'm apologizing right now for not looking you in the eye as I read these notes. But I'm hoping that you will, and I encourage you to take your cameras off if at all possible, so that we feel that we're more in community here together. But whatever you need to do, feel free to go dark as needed. So what we're trying to do here is think about mapping as a way to spark some possibilities for growing your network. Gonna finish this welcome. We'll do a 5-minute activity, 10 minutes or so of some theory, then questions, comments on that, and then finish with an activity. We should be through in 40 minutes there. So a couple of words to get our hearts in motion here. I am an outsider to the AFPC, except now I have a t-shirt thanks to Robbie, so I'm feeling belonging already. But an insider to this network of people who support what you're trying to do here. As a person of European descent, I feel particularly grateful to the indigenous peoples of the lands now known as Alaska, who share the deep knowledge necessary to guide our developing understanding of how to build sustainable food systems in times of dramatic environmental change. And it's amazing to see you connecting to all these other sources of wisdom throughout the land outside of Alaska. So I'd like to take just a collective moment to offer gratitude to the people who have for thousands of years stewarded the land and the water for all of us that we currently depend on. Indigenous people have cared for the land despite genocide, forced removal, land theft, and other grievous hardships and harms inflicted by colonizers and late stage capitalists alike. Personally, as a resident of Lishan Ohlone lands in so-called Berkeley, Oakland, California, I have deep gratitude for the indigenous women of the Sogorea Land Trust. I'm grateful for all that they do in raising our collective consciousness, working to preserve the Shell Mound ancestral burial sites near the bay, fighting to recover the ancestral bones that the University of California at Berkeley has sequestered, and protecting our sacred waters. And I have gratitude for the way Sogorea encourages each of us to center our relationships with each other, the land and the water. And finally, I'm grateful for the opportunity to support their diligent efforts to rematriate the land as they reclaim their rightful lands through the Sogorea Land Trust. And it's incumbent on all of us to help land back become real. So before we continue with this workshop, I'd like to appreciate anyone here who is indigenous to the lands known as Alaska, and invite you, if you're here, to share any words that you feel moved to offer at this time. You can just come off mute to do that. Okay, I think we'll just move on then. So let's jump in. So Social system mapping, it's a mix of system visualization tools conceived by Christine Capra as a way to represent a community network. They're used in the mapping process, which is designed to help you with systems change. So as Christine says, social system mapping is ultimately about systemic transformation of our social world. It's about supporting a shift that's becoming manifest in the world from systems of dominance, extraction, and exploitation to systems of connection, reverence, and regeneration. So much I've been seeing that happening here today or in this conference. It's amazing. It's not focused on the ecosystem and other life forms especially, or the land or any physical things, but rather on the people and the social activities we do together. So Christine names two fundamental obstacles that she sees to the shifting work that we want to do. One is seeing ourselves solely as individuals rather than as deeply embedded in an interconnected social web. And the other is seeing the system as a machine rather than an organism. It's a web of forces and influence that mesh in unpredictable ways, creating largely emergent patterns that are often unanticipated. And systems like that are complex, but when life is involved that has agency and can make adaptive choices, it becomes a complex adaptive system. So there's a couple of strategies we'll talk about that counter those obstacles. One are a set of tools that help us visualize ourselves embedded in the networks. And the other is adaptive action for change. Not some grand plan machine that moves forward with a fixed design, but small nudges and adjustments. As Elga said, listen, tweak, and evolve, as if we're cultivating the growth that we want. So let's just do a quick activity to get ourselves, our minds, and our thinking about our networks in place. If you've got an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper and you fold it in twice into quadrants and something to write with, we'll just take a couple of minutes. So take a moment to think about a network that you feel passionate about, that you're part of, and write that in the upper left-hand quadrant. Some of you are having to really go places to get paper in this digital world. I should have given you a heads up. And then take another minute to think about something within that network that you want to change, that you think is a difference that will make a difference in the outcomes that you want to achieve. You want to write that in the upper right quadrant. Let me just throw those prompts in the chat here. So pick a network and pick a change. We'll come back to these later. And when you get that, if you've got something, a way to mention that, put that in the chat. Let's just see what we've got going here. So I'll put one in for a network that I care about. Anchor Gardens, empowering coaches to connect more. In the group I work with, showing up for racial justice, more self-organized activity. What else we got? And if you want to come up, we're a pretty small group here. So if you want to come off mic, you can. I can't see everybody with my screen view here. So oh, there we go. What am I talking about? Alaska Farmers Market Association. What's the change, Brad? Maybe it's association. More community members getting involved in the key.
I would say securing dependable funding for staff and growth.
Alaska Farm Bureau, more member engagement. Wow, lots of engagement. All right, so you've got that on your sheet there. Keep that in the back of your mind as we work through the theory piece. And hang on for 10 minutes with me on this. So I want to focus on the tools that help us visualize ourselves embedded in a network. So the tools that we work with are a data collection survey tool called SumApp. And SumApp collects information from all the participants in the network. They fill out the survey, and that information is ported over to a network visualization software called Kumu. And that map gets embedded back into the SumApp dashboard so that participants can put in their information and see it materialize. So let's actually take a look at that. So I am in SumApp right now. This is the dashboard, and I'm looking at data from the social system mapping community of practice. That's the network I'm in. But within that, I can go ahead. So I'm a participant here, and I've put in a picture of myself and a little thing about me, a little tagline. But here's where the meat of it is the survey is for my profile has got information about how to connect with me, who I'm working with, what I'm interested in, what I want to make happen, what my identity is, what skills I have, what offers I can make to the community, what I need from the community, maybe stories about the community or my participation in it. You can make these questions any way you want, depending upon what you think is important for all of us to understand about the community we're in. That's the human assets. And here's the social assets. This is who we're connected to. So I've got everybody in the community shows up there. And so, for example, here's Cindy, and I can specify what kind of relationship that I have with that person. So I haven't updated this in a while. At that time, Cindy was just an acquaintance. Now she's a collaborator. And I've got a little story about why I connect with her, which I'll probably change. And now we have more periodic calls. So basically, I'm just putting information in there right now, which shows up immediately on the map. So this is a very dynamic, people put in their information, it shows up on the map, it's constantly evolving. The map is constantly reflecting the structure of the community. So in this particular community I'm in, these are the humans in it, you know, and this is the capital that we bring. If I click on any person here, all the information that they put in the survey about themselves is right there and available to me. And I can search for people by name, and all of that is available to me, to all the participants in the network. And you can filter and slice and dice by whatever characteristics were there. So I'm clicking on all the people that want to bring social system mapping to clients. Whoops. It's a subset. And of those subset, I know those people have a common interest. So that's the kind of thing that's possible. And if I understand the resources that people have and the resources that we need to collaborate, we can actually build them together and increase collective capacity by doing that on the asset side of things. But if we go look on the relationship side of things, the social capital, these are all the relationships that are in this small network. And this is a little overwhelming to look at that way, but if we focused on one person, myself, whoops. So this is a set of relationships that I have within this community. This is the personal network horizon that I have. This is who I can see, who I interact with. There's a bunch of people beyond it. And when I think about your network, 13 regional nodes, if that's the way it, 150 organizations, if I've got that right, there's no way that each of us can see that without some kind of a tool. So here's a way in which you can connect yourself and that limited horizon you've got to the larger world. This is a persistent artifact, so you can keep coming back to this as new things come up. So on the social side of things, I can increase the number of relationships that I have. I can also increase their depth. I can also connect people that I have a relationship with so that they have relationship. So we can increase the density, we can increase the highways and byways that trust and resources and ideas flow through the network. And by increasing that density, increasing the connections and relationships, new things start to emerge and become possible. So I think that's enough of that. Let me move over here. Come on. So the thing I'm trying to illustrate there is you can be on the dance floor, right, where you're interacting in this super rich way with all these people around you, but it's a limited network horizon. Then you can go up on the balcony and look down and see patterns that you wouldn't see otherwise. And you can, and that transition between being on the floor and up on the balcony creates a sense of understanding about how to extract patterns and increase influence within the network that you're working with. More importantly is if you're up on the balcony with a bunch of other people, now you're starting to build a collective awareness about what those patterns are. And you can start to move as a community, and you can convene people to look at the map or to look at other ways of sensing the community. But the map is a way of abstracting out. So, you know, we can be intentional about how we try to influence behaviors and patterns, and we do it all the time. In my world, we call it network weaving. We connect with people. We do it with generosity, empathy, and love. We create generative types of patterns at the community level. When we offer and accept gifts, we create relationship and accountability. We can connect people together. We initiate gatherings. We create sacred spaces, brave spaces. We conceive of projects and we do them together. We help our neighbors with the harvest. We plan activities that support the commons. And when we do that, we build relationships. As we do these things, our network changes in roughly predictable ways from a more fragmented kind of perspective to a much more connected construct with a lot more capacity and potential for realizing opportunities. This becomes greater than the sum of its parts to the extent that we can connect together. All right, so we're putting together the pieces here. That gives you some context to why social system maps can be useful. But now we go to the center of this theory of change. On the left, you see a complex adaptive system, and you see a bunch of behaviors that we do down on the dance floor that create patterns that you can see from the balcony. But the patterns constrain and guide the behaviors. And so you're caught in this kind of resilient and robust loop. But if you want to change that, you got to wiggle this. So one thing we do is you move to this adaptive action cycle, which is sensing these patterns and these behaviors, saying, what are we seeing? And from that, we move to, so how do you make sense of that? So what does it mean? What's my theory about what I'm seeing here? And once you've got that theory, you can go ahead and plan like an experiment to say, so if that theory is true, what would happen if I poked the system in this particular way? So you have this cycle of what, so what, now what, and then you'd act. And when you act, it changes the behaviors, it changes the patterns, maybe, and you look and observe that again, and you say, so what happened? So you end up with this iterative cycle of small adaptive changes. And the truth is, we do this all the time. You know, every moment as we work to change the world around us in small and large ways, you know, from regional food networks to growing a garden to trying to stay healthy, we do this naturally. We're not so aware that we do it, but if we were, it would be much more effective at systems change. So even more effective if we communicated our learning together with each other and learned from each other. Our collective wisdom would be that much richer and our outcomes more productive. Okay, so now we've got all the pieces. Let's put it together and wrap this up. So we have our complex adaptive system, our network, our community, or whatever, with its stubborn patterns and the underlying behaviors that hold them in place. And we have a change process called adaptive action cycle that notices the patterns, tries to understand them, makes a plan for change. And then we've got the small groups of people that actually comprise this adaptive system, which are constantly learning from these adaptive action cycles. And they are acting continuously, iteratively on the system. So with small experiments, and this never ends. And you might use network weaving practices or all the other approaches that we do to do systems change, but you're trying to provoke changes and then looking for them. So the map adds a whole other way of seeing. You know, we see by looking, but we see by telling stories or by measuring data or this, that, the other. The map allows you to see something that's generally invisible, the relational structure of these networks that we're embedded in. So yes, it's an abstraction, but it's a way of sensing and contributing to that cycle. And then finally, the small groups can actually change the tool, change the parameters of the scope so that it looks at different things depending upon what you think is most important to the changes you're trying to achieve. So there's a lot of moving parts, but they're under, a lot of them are under our control. So, you know, the social system map is just another way of seeing, but seeing these things that are largely invisible otherwise. It helps shift our thinking of ourselves as individual actors to actors that are really part of a network. Network is no longer a lifeless, abstract thing, but a living, breathing organism. And we can change it in the direction we desire if we execute 1 million experiments, each one teaching us something that we build the next experiment from. So succeed and fail fast, succeed and fail forward towards the change you envision. It's personal learning, it's collective learning, and it's system learning. And that's the end of this piece here. So we have a few minutes.
And Jim, there is in the chat box a question. Is this assuming
Okay.
networks of individuals with similar goals?
No, that's the beauty of it, or the terror of it. One way or another. You know, we all come in with our individual agendas, and clusters have their own agendas and form them and self-organize around them. It's like, how do you hold all of those intentions simultaneously? And how do you, what is the social technology you use to move towards a common vision as an attractor that people are taking all these different pathways to get there, but holding some kind of common purpose? You know, the way Helga talked about it in the last keynote was working across difference, but towards common purpose. And, you know, that's beyond the scope of social system mapping. That's, you know, that's the artistry of doing the work you all do. But it's also really cool to ask questions about what people's intentions are so that you can see those things in the network and see where some intentions might be collaborative and so forth. Hard to see that in a beyond 100 people. Common purpose then equals common goals. I guess so. I don't know. What did you think? What were you thinking about that, Robbie? Oh, she was just commenting.
Sorry. And I'm not putting my video on because hopefully you'll be able to hear me. My internet's been unstable.
You bet.
So as I've listened to you, when you asked the first question, working in the region that I work in, and this is common when you have multiple communities in one place, which is particularly in Alaska, where you have specific cultural indigenous communities who've been there longer, but they've been kind of overlaid with another type of community. And that goes back to your first slide where a so-called Western viewpoint tends to be aggressive, goal-oriented, individually oriented, where Indigenous communities are community-oriented. And in the role that I've had in working with first the Kodiak Archipelago Rural Regional Leadership Forum, the forum was really all about trying to create a space where the rural communities and the Indigenous voice could actually be heard in this greater round, in this big overlay that's been put on top of them, from everything from fisheries to food to governance. And so I struggle with this idea of looking at the Kodiak region as, okay, that's really our network. We live in a very distinct geographic region, but this marginalization has been, we're gradually pushing it out, and with the successes that we've demonstrated with projects like the Forum in Alutiiq Grown, we have more so-called non-native people coming in to be with us, which is what we want. But yet how I'm struggling with what you're saying is when you have aggressive behavior, Putin, and I think Putin is the extreme example, it'll blow your network out of the water. And so I'm not trying to criticize, I'm just trying to understand, that's all.
Yeah, do other people have some responses to that? I think it's a very real problem, Robbie. You know, Milani Goodchild talks about the two wampum belt, where she talks about system science, the Western approach, and the Indigenous wisdom running side by side. And hopefully there are benefits from both perspectives. And she tries to weave connections between the two, but have them both equally voiced. You know, I think we're on a learning journey here to figure out how to deal with that. I would love to hear sort of what kind of solutions y'all have come up in that space. I'm constantly drawn into Western, not so much extractive, but very Western fragmented kinds of thinking. And the whole network perspective is just seems so connected to an ecosystem point of view, a regenerative, building, abundant community, you know, tribal wisdom kind of picture. And so I think there's so much to be learned in having this conversation.
And again, I'm not
action.
saying what I'm saying to be disrespectful.
No.
Obviously we all struggle with this if we're conscious thinking people. And it's hard to overcome. You know, I've been working in the Kodiak community for 30 years, and I'm feeling like I'm just starting to shift from what I was taught in college and the way that I was raised. But I will say that for us, it comes down to what the Mandells, Arnold and Amy Mandel with the process work community in Portland say. It comes to deep democracy. It comes to every voice is important, and it's all about clearing the space so that those quiet voices that get run over can be heard. And maybe you're saying the same thing in a different way, but that's what we try to practice in Kodiak. And it can be very frustrating because not everybody respects that approach, but in our circles, that's what we do.
Let me just do a time check here, one thing. Because I started my clock at the wrong time. So how much time till this is over? Because I'm thinking of shifting things. How much until Cindy gets on? I'm thinking it's about 10 minutes from now. Is that right?
Yeah, that'll be up to you, Jim. We have till 3:15 for the whole session.
Right. But okay, I'm thinking it's 10 minutes. Because what I'm thinking is instead of going into the activities, the next activity I was going to look at, engage you in. I think it makes sense to continue on just with this conversation. But I'd love to hear other people join in. Either, I put out a bunch of talk here, right? And a lot of ideas and really fast. And so I'm just curious about your observations about that, like Robbie's. How, I mean, the activity that I was going to engage us in was like, okay, you've identified a system change that you would like to see in one of your networks. And now I was going to ask you to take time to think about, so what are the questions that you would put in a survey to identify the behaviors that you would like to see people change, or the resources that would need to be brought into a network to achieve the objectives, the change that you want. And then what are the connections? What are the types of relationships? What are the structures of the relationships that you would also need? And those are the questions that come into the survey. They become profile questions, and they become connection questions. But I was going to have you do that specifically about your own networks.
I think that's
Thank you for that,
valuable,
Commissioner.
and I think that's valuable, Jim. And I'm going to hit that exactly Robbie's question in my section. So I think that we
Okay.
can go on
Okay.
if you want to.
Yeah. We'll do any people that have any other things that are writing on, they're having seen this whole, being introduced to this whole process? Just come off mic and.
Yeah, I would agree. Just talking through an example of how you would come up with a survey, and that seems valuable.
Yeah, I mean, I think one way to do that is a few people get together. I mean, Cindy's going to talk about this, I'm sure. And we have an example of Robbie and Rachel and Lisa and Marianne and a few others thinking about building that initial survey for y'all. But one way to do it is to have a few people that are thinking in these terms and say, so what are the things that we feel are part of our theory of change for this organization? Like we're so diverse, we need to, what I've heard here, we need to increase engagement. Okay, so if you were going to increase engagement, then you'd have to start thinking about like, how engaged are you? How often do you initiate something within this community? How often do you partake of something in this community? Are you involved in things outside of this community that really spark your passion? And start to build that into the survey so that you start getting a collective sense about what kinds of things are moving people. Now you could do that with a regular survey, but as soon as you start putting in the relational questions and saying, who do I do things with in this community? Is it the people that are just local to me physically? Are they people that are just in an interest group that extends over the entire state, but it's just this narrow focus of interest? You start to see those patterns. So, you can start with some things if you're not a very well connected network. You can start with just like, what are your interests? What are your intentions? What are the offers that you would have for this community? What do you need from this community, do you think? What would strike, those would sort of basic questions. What skills do you bring if you're trying to map the resources? And then most importantly, a set of relational questions about like, who do you know? Who do you have really generative interactions with? Who do you actually collaborate with? When's the last time you collaborated with these people? So those are some of the baseline questions that we sort of put into often any survey just to sort of get the conversation going. But it's really the iterative conversation with the community looking at, is this map actually helping us be a spotlight on the things that we feel are important? And if not, then shift the questions and do that iteratively. Sorry, that was a long answer. So one example I was going to give for this exercise was, so for example, in the social system mapping community practice that I'm part of, Cindy's part of, the desired change I envision is that people in the community initiate more activities with each other. So I might ask these survey questions in the profile side of it. How many times in the last 6 months have you initiated a conversation or activity in this community? And then with that info mapped, you could see which parts of this web where self-organizing is flourishing or not, you know, or what gets in your way, or what excites you about initiating something like that. You know, that's simply a survey question, but in a population that's engaged with the map on a regular basis, they're more likely to respond. And you can see it laid down in the map, and it's persistent and anybody can look at it. On the connection side of that is like, well, I already mentioned this, have you engaged, you know, in an activity with this person in the last 6 months? So I don't know, we've got a couple of minutes. Are there some changes in communities that you had indicated on your second quadrant up there that are that you would offer some kind of, what are the questions you would offer in a survey, either connection questions or profile questions, to start to get a picture of how your community is playing against those, against that, the desired outcome that you want. You can either just come off mic or put it in the chat. I'm thinking that the amount of time is that landing with anybody or not? Because if it's not, we don't actually have that much time. But if you've got something sort of along the lines of what I just said. So your question's about more engagement in the communities that you had. What would be the questions you want to ask people?
Jim, as I put in
Yeah,
the comment earlier, it seems like a lot of us, when you asked network, we identified an organization that we're involved with. And that a common challenge of the organizations that we've named in Alaska is we want somehow for people who aren't engaging with these organizations to join us. You know, we want to expand the membership of the organizations. So there's a common challenge there. And so the people that we want to take the survey are not, you know, they're not accessible to us now. So maybe just based on what I've heard, maybe you would be asking, you'd really be focusing your questions on who do you know? You're a member of our organization. Who do you know who's out there in the periphery that's not engaged? And why do you think they're not engaged? Or what would engage them? I'm just wondering how your approach would apply to that challenge.
Yeah, and I think that's a little different. I think that's, you could do a liberating structure called social system webbing, social webbing, which basically is drawing on a board. You know, who do you know? Who do you ask? You know, the people in a group of 30 people. Who do you know, and who do you think would be interested? So that you start getting a map of people that are not on your, you know, would not be in your network now. I think that's a completely, that's a powerful tool for, especially if you're thinking about organizations that might collaborate with you where you're sort of connecting with an entire other group of people outside your network. So yeah, I think that this tool is more for building community in a community that already identifies. So if the Alaskan Food Policy Council actually has a membership list, you know, that becomes a sphere that you can work in. But it doesn't address your question about what about the people that are outside of the sphere or are not on the map. They're not even on the periphery. They're outside. The
Brenda.
Say again?
Oh, I have bad audio. I'll put it in the chat.
So I think we're coming up to the, so what strengths can they share or have capacity to share? What do they want to learn more about? Yeah, I mean, these are great questions to.
Yeah, it's perfect
into
for
the
me
profile.
because those are the exact questions I'm dying to talk about.
So let's segue. I think we're come to the end of this, and Cindy's got a real live example that she's been working for a while now. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jim. So
Thank
good
you.
to watch theory. Hang on. Oh, I cannot start my screen share. Let's try it again. Okay, I want to share. Oh, I don't know what I want to share. This one? No, that's my screen, not that one. Let's try this. And now you see everything. How about, oh, I'm having issues. All right, we're just gonna go like this to the beginning. Don't look, don't look. Okay, just to let you know that I'm Cindy Carnes and I grew up in Fairbanks. I'm a daughter of an activist. I just learned that from our last speaker that I'm going to introduce myself like that from now on. And maybe that's the cause of all my troubles. I don't know. But so I grew up in a bilingual church. First Presbyterian Fairbanks had both Inupiat and English going on at the same time. When we got married, I had 3 Inupiat pastors. And anyway, culture is a huge thing. And excuse me, I'm 100% German. So that, you know, you hold on to yours, but you try to live in the culture you're in, all those things, it's kind of hard. And so, I'm just seeing that you're seeing all of my screen. Oh, well, anyway, maybe because of all that, I'm able to see patterns of social interactions. And it's maybe because I taught school for so many years, I don't know. But I do know that my Inupiat elder mentor people, they can do a Sudoku in colors without doing the mathematical part of it. They can just see the patterns and put the things in. And I think whoever said that we need to change our Western ways of thinking is exactly true. So I just ran through, I'm thinking to myself, all the things that I've been trying to teach people all these years about changing the way we are, and nobody's listening. I've done a lot with transition, lots of presentations for all sorts of people. Here's one I did 2017. You guys are on the bandwagon already, so you know this, but you know, we're deeply dependent on oil. Did we change? Nothing happened. I can tell everybody that we need to learn from our ancestors. Did they change their habits? No. So Rich Seifert and I have a little joke going on. It's like doing these presentations is like hitting the Pillsbury Doughboy. And as soon as you do it, it pops right back and nothing really changes. And so I was like really about done with trying to get people to change. And it just started seeming so impossible because it's so big. You come to this conference and you're like, holy crap, there's a lot going on. And how can I connect? And it's just overwhelming. And then you go outside and take a walk. So how do you guys think people change? Just take off your microphones and just popcorn out your answers. What's the big motivation?
They gain connection.
They gain connection. Oh, that's a new one. Good. What else?
Faced with great difference creates a creative tension.
Yeah, faced with great difference. Yeah. Anything else?
Showing people what's possible.
Showing people what's possible is also good. I'm going to make this a little bigger. Okay. I was going to do Mentimeter, but we're not going to do that because we don't have enough time. So Albert Einstein, we're in good company, says we can't solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. We have to change our relationships. We can't keep doing the same thing. We can't keep giving these, I call them drive-bys, these drive-by presentations, hoping everybody's going to change. There has to be something. We need to shake it up. We need to change it. We need to not do what we've been doing all these years. And so about the time that Robbie and Rachel were applying for this grant, I was taking a class from June Hawley. It came in my inbox. It was very random. And they said, June Hawley said, we need to have system shifting networks. And it included all these things. And I'm like, where have you been all my life? And I'm like, this is what we need to do. We need to have a system shifting network. And what would happen if all across the state of Alaska, we could communicate so fast and so quickly, and we knew the people. So yeah, since I know them, then I'll tell them what would happen. And it was mind blowing to think about the possibilities. But my main concern is Anchorage, because I live in Eagle River Valley, and I have a concern that once there's no food in Anchorage, they're all going to come to my house and start camping in my yard or something, and like they're doing already in downtown Anchorage. So I'm like, okay, we got to take care of Anchorage first before we, don your own air mask before you help others. So June Hawley has this idea of a network being like a village. And when I think about the times that I've spent in villages, it's a lot like this, except for if any of you live in a village, you know that there's people that don't participate because they don't like so-and-so and, the little parts. But if you can get everybody to work together and hold on to that, if you look at it like a Lukatuk, when they toss the whale, what's that on? Yeah.
Blanket
Skins.
toss.
Blanket toss, yay. Yeah, it's like that. And if somebody lets go or somebody pulls too hard, then you got somebody shooting off but anyway, that's beside the point. So networks cause relationships. Relationships make information flow so much faster. And we know that from Facebook, because you learn a lot from your Facebook friends that you don't really learn from the newspaper, because it's not your Facebook friend telling you. So if you're just going to give a talk, you get a couple droplets of information that maybe stick. But if you get it through your friends, there's a flow of information. You'll really listen to it. So here's the patterns. We have to figure out new patterns. And then the pandemic hit. And I'm like, at that point, I was like, well, I'm about done giving talks anyway. Who cares? I'm old. I'm going to retire. I'm just going to plant my seeds and have a nice life. But my friends and my students, I probably have about 100 students in Anchorage. They said, come on, we need to get everybody organized, because we need kids outside. They can't stay in our houses. And a lot of new moms or young moms, they're like, we got to get them out in the gardens. We got them building things, doing things. Let's make this happen. And I'm like, oh, really? Another bandwagon I have to get on? And there's the old bandwagon. I didn't want to get on it, but they convinced me to get on the bandwagon one more time. And we formed anchorgardens.org, and you can go to that website if you want. And here's the music video. I hope you can hear it.
Whenever I come to see you, I always find you outside, with your hands in the ground, getting down with anything that grows. And all I wanna do is join you in that morning sunshine. I wanna know how you grow all your vegetables. 'Cause we're gonna grow a garden. We're gonna grow a garden, yeah. We're gonna grow a garden, darling. Well, I saved you some seeds from my pumpkins and peas, and I can foresee we'll get them growing like weeds. We could stay up real late and plant them by the moon. And we're gonna make everyone jealous when they see what we've got growing on the trellis. It'll be raining down in our very own food monsoon. 'Cause we're gonna grow a garden. We're gonna grow a garden, yeah. We're gonna grow a garden, darling. Said we're gonna grow a garden. We're gonna grow a garden, yeah. We're gonna grow a garden, darling, yeah.
There was my first, oh, stop. Yay, thank you. This is, so we put coaches in every neighborhood, and this is Perusa. She decided, self-organized, she decided with her neighbors that she wanted a garden at the end of her cul-de-sac and just went out and did it. And we supplied them a lot of the materials, not all of it. The neighbors brought some, and they just did it. So there's a garden at the end of their cul-de-sac. Here's the part that really has to be worked on. And this is some of your questions. You have to put in lots of support for everybody to feel comfortable doing a project like that. Just saying, hey, I'm going to build this garden, and what do you have? How can you help? You have to send frequent emails, give compliments, hold support meetings, role model a new culture, share your mistakes, all these things. And that's the hard part about putting a network together. It's not just the map, it's all the background stuff you have to do. So for us, we have this community with layers of support. Oh, I forgot to put we have NeighborWorks, which is our fiscal sponsor. But I put in greater than the sum. There's free workshops on how to do this network stuff, computer stuff, every Monday morning at 7. Now, I don't go to all of those. I listen to them later, but that's a great support for me as the only person. So, I just recruited another partner to help me with the network, the computer stuff. But then we have a core team, we have neighborhood coaches, and then we have the gardeners. And we have 1,500 people on our Facebook page and 260 or something that have filled out the survey. So like Jim was saying, you got to build this culture, and Acre Gardens is like an iceberg. Setting the culture is so important. It can't be Western. It has to be those native values. We have to role model those native values to be welcoming, accepting, building lasting relationships, trust, all the things that I should have pulled those up, but I didn't, that we have in common. Make sure everybody knows that they're a leader. And I hear those old stories of the villages where somebody would just go out and start fixing a roof and everybody would come out and help them. And I'm like, how did that happen? It's because of the idea that when everybody is a leader. So some people, if they look carefully, can watch us practicing these new ways of being, these new patterns. But a lot of people only see our events and projects. But once they get involved, they start getting this change of culture we're trying to get across. So it's really hard for me to shift from the way I like to do things, the Western side, a boss type calling the shots. I was a teacher in 8th grade for 25 years. Of course, I like to be a boss. I like to control. I like lists of tasks. And I know how to deal with power struggles with 8th graders, at least. But What we want to do is model peers working together. So nobody's the boss, and that's really hard. Self-organizing, and then cheer that person or whoever self-organized on. Deepening relationships, plan on becoming best friends with them, value diversity of opinion. Whoops. So I want you to do something for me real quick. Fold your arms in front of you. Cross your arms. Get them crossed. Okay, that's how you're comfortable doing it. I want you to do it with the opposite arm in front. I had my right arm on top. I want you to change. It's even hard for me to make it happen. But every time you're thinking that you're comfortable, you need to change the way you fold your arms and just feel what that feels like. And a lot of people are going to be uncomfortable with this model. My partner in the Anchor Gardens is like, we need to control this. We can't. And I'm like, no, we have to allow everything. Our goal is to say yes to everybody. So somebody, I can't remember who, said you need guiding principles. And so these are our guiding principles. And I stole them from Network Weavers. Interesting side note that nobody knows is that Liz Snyder and Takan both got together, and they were the early members of Anchor Gardens, and they wrote our bylaws. Interesting thought. Anyway, we will collaborate. We'll support each other. We'll experiment and learn from mistakes. We'll recruit, facilitate, and incorporate diverse perspectives and viewpoints. We'll prioritize activities that, let me go back to this one. I just want to say to whoever it was, Lorinda, no, somebody said, these diverse perspectives, if you get a bully in, you have to stand up for your guiding principles and pull them out and say, wait, hold on, these are our guiding principles, check them out. If you don't want to abide by these, then you don't get to participate. So that's hard to do sometimes, especially in small towns, but keep your guiding principles right there in case you get somebody in that isn't getting the role modeling that you're modeling. So prioritize activities that are consistent with our mission and have the potential for meaningful impact. Practice consensus decision-making whenever possible. Anybody is invited to join the core team if they'd like to become more involved in decision-making. And everyone's a leader and can initiate activities or projects. So we worked hard at all this: patience, curiosity, discomfort, humility, but the trust issue, we lost a huge opportunity because of trust. Yeah, so you have to figure out how you can trust people early on, and sure, you might get burned, but it's better to try to trust than not, I think. So when people are arguing around the table of whether this was an old woman or a young woman, and they're both right, you have to honor the diversity of their, how they view things. Do you all see the old woman? The old woman has her chin down here and her nose is here. And the young woman has an eyelash here and a nose here and a chin. You see that? I'll send it to you if you want it. So I don't know if I have time to do this form. Might send it to you later to fill out, but one of the things that we do for our group is we continually send out these little surveys, and they're phrased in positive ways. Like, I like to make phone calls to my neighbors. I like to, and then they can rate themselves on a score, you know. So the behaviors that we want, they get to rate themselves. And so I'll put that in the chat here when I'm done, because I don't have the chat up right now, but
and we do have about 20 minutes, Cindy, if that helps.
Well, I know that Robbie and Rachel have at least 10, so
okay,
we can go back to this at the end if there's time. So I just want to point out that the Western culture way of doing things is the good old boy system. You all know that one. What's so great about the good old boy system is you can trust everybody in it and you're sure everything's going to get done. Whereas a new network system, it might not be getting done. Things might fall apart a little bit, but that's your learning. That's not necessarily a mistake. This is the military way of doing things. You just know what the person above is doing. You don't ever get together, but you can trust it. The hub is me. I'm Tom in the middle because I like to control everything and give papers out. But you notice there's no way for them to respond back to Tom. And if Tom were to get run over by a truck, then all of them would be out of luck. So that's not a good sustainable way to do a network. Here's our current political system. We have Republicans, Democrats, and independents, and ne'er do they ever meet. They stay in their own little silos. Oh, and then I did try this. I have to admit, I wanted to have a structureless. I think this was in the maybe 2008 or something, 2009. Let's go structureless. And finally, I realized after a couple years, finally, I realized after a couple of years that this is really the tyranny of the people who want structureless, because they're the ones, then nobody feels free to do anything. And it's just it's a terrible structure to have no structure. So if you look at nature, Brad's laughing at me, that's okay. If you look at nature, there's webs, and if you look why there's webs, it's always to collect and to sort, and it's fragile, but you can always fix it again. So that's the pattern I'm going for in the network that I'm trying to build. Oh, when I taught sixth grade, it was a strange experience. I don't know what planet sixth graders are from, but I've been used to teaching up high school and middle school. So I got there and I'm like, what is this creature? I couldn't figure it out. Finally, I found some older teacher to tell me, I think it was a teacher in Juneau. Anyway, she said, you've got to draw your network. And this is when I first learned the very important lesson that if you don't draw it, you can't see it. And so in this particular instance, Meg, everybody was happy to work with Meg. Nobody wanted to work with Lily. Nobody wanted to work with Sam. But if Sam could work with Jill or Beth, that would make Sam happy. And Meg, she could probably work with anybody, but obviously maybe not Liz. Anyway, you set the class not in alphabetical order, but in systems of small groups or however you want, so that the best can come from what you got here. And when you can change the system a little bit, it's amazing what can happen. And so I kept this my whole teaching career after that. And it's so the value of drawing and seeing your network is really important. And then I retired and I started teaching permaculture. There's webs and patterns everywhere in permaculture. So of course, drawing it out always helps too. So when I dreamed of Anchor Gardens, I'm like, okay, this is how I think it's gonna be. This is what I'm thinking. And that's how it turned out. So it's kind of cool. But then I realized that these dark dots in the middle, they're all the neighborhoods, but they're only where people live. It's not telling who they talk to or who they cooperate with. And I just want to point out, I left the coding in here, and this is where I'm stuck. You have to write coding to tell the little dots what to do. So if you have somebody that you know that loves HTML, I personally think prisoners should be made to do HTML. That would really help you if you're interested in this network mapping stuff. So here's a closer version. I zoomed in, and you can see all these dots that aren't connected. And that means either one, they don't know where they live, and that was a real possibility. In Anchorage, nobody knows what neighborhood they're in, or they really aren't connected, or they didn't fill out the survey all the way. And so my job this year has been trying to find these people and connect them into their neighborhoods. But to look at the whole group without their neighborhoods, you can also see these unattached people. There's some of the people are attached in the periphery, but look at where we get our information, not from our neighborhoods. We get it from everybody all over. And the center of this tangle is where the most action is. So if I were just to click in, you can go deeper and deeper and deeper until you figure out who the movers and shakers really are. And that's kind of important too, because there's some movers and shakers in here that I don't even know. So it's on me to go in there and start connecting to the people that really are movers and shakers and know a lot of people. And I don't know them. How come? So I need to reach out to them. So Jim showed his picture of him. This is mine in the Anchor Gardens community. Notice the things I need: manure and pots and trays. Oh, manure. Oops. There's another page where you can just pull down and find out what everybody has to offer. These little orange things are what people can have put on the survey that they are willing to offer. The one that I thought was most amazing is all these people offer to do labor. So if you go into this program, you can click on labor and you can call up Sue Armstrong, or if you know that you're in whatever this green teal colored network or neighborhood is, you can call up Greg and he's willing to come over and help you. So, and Greg is really a cool guy. He's in the winter, he's a barge operator. He was stuck in the Aleutians and he was texting in about gardening in the Aleutians this winter. So here's what our front page looks like. There's a guide to the map. You can search any person. If you wonder if your friend's on here, just click your name and you can go in there and click it. So to democratizing everything, networks are a great equalizer. Everyone is holding the power, but the problem is they don't know that they're holding the power. So somehow we have to educate them to say, hey, you have the power, you have this network, everybody can go in and look at it. And everyone has access to the Rolodex. You don't have to come to me to find out who knows how to can something. You can go right to the network, click on who can, and you have a whole list of names that are willing to teach people about canning. So it's amazing, actually. So in preparation for this talk, I put a little survey out and I asked, and 15% of them responded. 92% of them have improved relationships as a result of this network. 62 have learned new skills, 62%. 68% implemented a new practice in their community. Sorry, I spelled things wrong. I was hurrying. 23% have started looking for more funding opportunities. And I thought that was amazing. I just threw that question in there randomly, seeing if anybody, but some of our coaches are like, gosh, I got to start teaching this stuff. And so they're finding grants to teach canning. And 100% believe that the members add value to each other's work. So that was a great little survey. And I think that's a good representation of the whole thing. My hero, Danella Meadows, she says, we can't impose our will in a system, but we can listen to what the system tells us, discover how its properties and our values can work together to bring forth something much better than could ever have been produced by our will alone. So there's a bunch on network weaving. I can put that in the chat if you want. So I should maybe copy this. No. Oh, my call to action. Join the experiment. Yay, we shall rule Alaska with networks. All right. I can stop my screen share and you guys can ask me questions if you want. $500 gardens, yeah. Anchorage, what's Anchorage pretrial? Look at that, yeah. Yeah, so the jail in town, yeah, no kidding. You can find me at anchorgardens.org. You can email me anchorgardens@gmail.com. No, it's anchorgardensanc@gmail.com in case Fairbanks wants to start their own anchor gardens or another community. We have so much manure coming out of our ears. I'm telling you what, used to be that everybody who had animals in Anchorage would pay to have their manure dumped in the dump in the landfill over here. And now they found out that we need it and we have problems because we can't get rid of it fast enough. But if it starts raining, then you have poop running down the streets, right? So somebody gave us their lot on I Street if you're by New Sagaya sometime. And we transformed that whole thing into a community garden, and all the resource cardboards from Home Depot and Lowe's are coming there. Grass clippings are coming there. We got stuff. So yeah, we've gotten a lot of responses.
Well, thank you, Cindy, for that. And just to keep on track, if Rachel and Robbie need 10 minutes, we'll move on to that.
Great. Well, thanks, Jim and Cindy, for framing some of this big animal that is social systems mapping. There's a lot involved here. There's also a lot of interpretations of how to do this. And I think the questions today are things that have come up in conversation. And it's certainly, I don't think that we have, for the Alaska Food Policy Council project, I don't know that we have nailed it. And it's important for folks here to know that in our steps moving forward, we're taking feedback every step of the way. And so if you are interested and you're not yet involved in this process, and you want to be connected to your local, the node or the community closest to you, let us know. Let's chat. We'd love everyone to get more engaged, and we'll tell you how to do so at the end of this, the rest of our slides. So as we said, there were several phases to this project, again, resulting this fall in a fully realized map that you all just saw, and then a 10-year food systems action plan. And these are some of the organizations that are involved. There are many, many more people and organizations involved in this, but this is just a smattering to show you who. There might be some that are local in your area to show who's who in the project. Robbie can talk about the community assets mapping workshops that we did.
Yeah, so this is a map that just shows where the communities were based geographically, and with that included surrounding communities. And you can see we did not get through the whole state. We tried to find partners in regions, but we aimed for 10 and we ended up with 13. So yeah, we acknowledge that is one deficiency of our project is it was pretty ambitious, I'm told, to try and do a statewide map like this. So we did get a good bit of the state. Okay, Rachel, your turn.
We practiced the over to you handoffs.
Over to you, Rachel.
Thanks, Robbie. So phase 3 of our project involved gathering data at the individual level through a statewide questionnaire. Through developing this questionnaire to inform the survey, we realized that there are many of our partners who are already putting out surveys around the state. And so we've got the portal that we'll show you at the end of this this session. We're trying to share more surveys and questionnaires from our partners to try and avoid survey fatigue, which is a big problem in Alaska, especially with the more rural communities. So that's what we decided. And then we put together our form. That's what we've been working on the last couple of weeks, really, our form to have people fill out to then add themselves to the map, and making sure that we're asking the right questions to populate the maps with the right data. So this is happening right now in real time. Over to you, Robbie.
Yeah, and like we said, we'll use all this to create a statewide plan. But what I want to get to is actually showing you how to participate if you want to learn more, or even take our questionnaire and join the network. You can go to this website here. Let me see, I can drop it in the link here. It tells you, oh, thanks, Rachel. It tells you a little bit about the project. At the very top, there's an opt-in form and thank you, Cindy, how to, so if you fill out your opt-in form, you'll get sent a link where you can set up your profile, let folks know what things you might have to share and what things you want to learn more about or collaborate on. And then all of that data is put into a visual map. And Cindy so graciously pulled some slides in together. So Cindy, I'm going to scroll through these if you want to explain them. I do want to make the point that this map is a living, breathing, changing thing. So what we interpret now may be very different after 50 more people sign up. So I just want to caveat it with that, but I think we'd be remiss if we didn't share some images of what this looks like. So Cindy, I'll scroll through real quick and you can let us know what we're looking at.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly. I know that these people in the middle have filled out the forms. It looks like you guys put some people in without them filling out the forms. Is that right?
We did send, yeah, to all of our node leaders, so they might have just not gotten to it.
So they
yet.
haven't connected in yet.
Oops, there we go.
There's Danny, that's everybody that he knows. And then we see a mistake. So we can go in there today. If we had the time and energy, we could change that other so that that's not something somebody could choose.
Maybe next week.
Right? Yeah. And that's just close ups. You can get pictures of who's in the network. There you go. Just the things that you could do to play with, just to see. I liked, was it this one? I think it's this one way out there in Kodiak, or maybe it's the next one. I don't know. Maybe I decided not to put that one in, but there's just a tiny little sliver over in Kodiak. They're connected over there by themselves. But yeah, there's Kyra. She knows a lot of people all over the state.
Yeah, so thank
There
you,
you go.
Cindy.
Yeah.
If you want to learn more before you fill out this network form, please go to this website that I am dropping right here. And on there is an opt-in form there. So you can read through it, figure out if you want to be a part of it, take a look around. This is we'll be hopefully keeping this alive for many years to come. Hopefully this can help build more formalized connection, build bigger projects. We know our grantors love collaborations, especially from multiple different sectors. So this is just one of the purposes of this network. And also I know our node participants and you probably have different ideas about this network. So like Rachel said, please let us know your thoughts. Let us know how we can improve it. We weren't going to let perfect get in the way of progress. So we are starting this and stumbling our way through it, but I think we've come a long way, and I do hope that you'll consider joining the network. And I guess I will stop sharing my screen and open it up to questions. I see Lorinda, is there a way to compare networks? So are you, I think that would be hard. I'm no network expert, but I think every network is probably pretty individualized in terms of like our scale and the scope, but Jim or Cindy that may have a little more experience, you might be able to take that question.
Jim would, I don't know.
You know, there's metrics for measuring networks, but it requires the entire network, everybody to participate. And these networks aren't like that. These networks are, you know, they're self-grown. There's not a vice president at the top that says everybody will fill this out. So the only way you can compare the metrics, which is if you've got full participation. And this is a social engineering tool, right? This is a way for people to build relationships. This is a way for people to see themselves as part of you know, a rich network, a rich community. So it's really got a different purpose.
I'm excited for
you-
next year because the network will be there. And then after this, we can go click on the people that we liked at the different things and just say, hey, let's meet for coffee this week. I don't know. Maybe we can do that now, but it's not so easy in one place.
Does anybody else have any other questions? I hope it's clear as mud to everyone. Yeah, so get in touch with Rachel or I if you have questions about this network, want to get involved. And like we said, this was part of a planning grant for a regional food system partnership, and we are hoping to move to an implementation grant and have a more formalized working network. So thank you guys for listening. I know it's been a long week, a long day. And I really, really appreciate your time and all your energy and everything y'all do. And I see Robbie with an E has her hand up.
What do we gonna do? A really quick question?
No, I just want to make a comment.
Okay.
Robbie with an I or Robbie I, when you come to Kodiak at the end of April, will you please hit on this project and I'll get everybody to sign their forms.
Yes, ma'am.
We'll have about 25 of our farmers there.
Heck yes.
Okay. Well, we're excited to see the network next year or later this year as everyone fills it in. And with that, thank you, Jim and Cindy and Rachel and Robbie and everyone who was here. It is break time. We're going to take a break and go pick your room. That's starting at 3:30. So
Great.
Stretch your legs.
Bye.
Thank you so much. You all are
Good
amazing.
to see you, Jim.
Yep.
Yeah.
Bye.